The stars looked different out here, Captain Jake Morrison thought as he stared through the viewport of the horizon's edge. 3 months into their deep space exploration mission, and they had traveled further from Earth than any human vessel before them. The crew of 47 had mapped 17 new systems, collected data on countless phenomena, and still found nothing but empty planets and silent void. Until today, the sensor alarm had started screaming 2 hours ago. Lieutenant Amy Carter ran the scans 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Ships, dozens of them, arranged in a perfect grid formation around a blue gas giant. The vessels were massive, easily 10 times the size of the horizon's edge, and their design was unlike anything in human records. "They're hailing us," Amy said, her voice tight with tension. "Audio only. I think they're using our own radio broadcast to learn our language." Jake straightened in his command chair. This was it. First contact, the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. He nodded to Amy. "Open the channel." The voice that came through the speakers was harsh, clicking and grinding, but clearly speaking English words. "Human vessel, you have entered sovereign space of the Velkorn Empire. Identify your purpose or be destroyed." Jake cleared his throat. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth Vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace. We had no knowledge of your territorial claims. We're explorers, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." A long pause followed. When the voice returned, it seemed almost confused. "Friendship? You speak of friendship while trespassing in Imperial space? Your species is unknown to us. Where is Earth? How many worlds do you control?" "Earth is our homeworld," Jake explained carefully. "We control no other worlds. We've only recently developed faster-than-light travel. We mean no offense or threat." Another pause, longer this time. Jake could hear clicking sounds in the background like insects communicating. When the Velkorn spoke again, the tone had changed. Colder, more certain. "A new species. Expanding. Unregistered. This is unacceptable. You will transmit the coordinates of Earth immediately. Your species will submit to Velkorn authority or face extinction. You have 10 of your minutes to decide." Jake felt his blood run cold. "We're not submitting to anyone. Earth is a sovereign world. If your empire believes in law and order, then surely we can negotiate." "There is no negotiation with the Velkorn Empire. There is only submission or death. 9 minutes remain." "The channel went dead, Captain," Amy said quietly. "I'm reading weapons charging on all their ships. They're surrounding us," Jake's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned. The Horizon's Edge was an exploration vessel with minimal armaments. Even their strongest weapons wouldn't scratch one of those massive alien ships. But giving them Earth's location, that could doom their entire species. "Plot a jump back toward Earth," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed. Don't go directly there, but get us as far from here as possible." "Sir, they'll follow us," Lieutenant Danny Shaw said from the weapons station. "We can't outrun them, I know. But we can try." The countdown hit 0. The Velkorn ships opened fire without another word. Blue energy bolts streaked across space, slamming into the horizon's edge. The shields held for maybe 5 seconds before collapsing entirely. The ship shuddered as explosions rocked the hull. "Jump drive is charging," Amy shouted over the alarms. 20 seconds. "We don't have 20 seconds," Danny called back as another volley hit. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the back of the ship, something exploded. Jake gripped his chair. "Everyone hold on. Jump the second we can, emergency protocols be damned." At 15 seconds, Amy activated the jump drive anyway. The universe twisted. The horizon's edge lurched into faster-than-light space with half its systems failing and fires burning on 3 decks. They had escaped, but barely. The ship dropped out of jump space 6 hours later, systems critical, hull breached in a dozen places. Jake ordered all hands to damage control. The crew worked frantically, sealing breaches, fighting fires, trying to keep their wounded ship alive. That's when the second disaster struck. "Captain, we have a contamination alert," Amy reported, her face pale. "Deck C, sections 4 through 9. Something breached the hull during the attack and released a substance into the ventilation system." Jake pulled up the sensor data. A purple mist was spreading through the lower decks. Chemical analysis showed it was some kind of biological agent, molecular structure unlike anything in their database. "Seal those sections immediately," Jake ordered. "Get everyone out." "Sir, we have people trapped down there. The doors jammed during the attack. Lieutenant Carter is down there with 6 others." Jake's heart sank. "Amy, trapped in a contaminated section with what was probably a Velcorn biological weapon. Can we bypass the door controls? Working on it, but it'll take at least 10 minutes. In the contaminated section, Amy pressed herself against the wall as the purple mist filled the corridor. The 6 crew members with her were panicking, trying to seal their suits, searching for masks. Amy knew it was probably useless. If the Velcorn had designed this weapon, it was likely lethal even in trace amounts. The mist reached her. She took a breath, unable to help it, expecting to feel pain, to feel her body shutting down. Instead, she felt a strange tingling in her nose and throat. A burning sensation, but not painful exactly. More like when she had eaten really spicy food at that Thai restaurant back on Earth. She waited for death. It didn't come. Amy, can you hear me? Jake's voice crackled through her communicator. We're working on the doors. Hang on, Captain, Amy said slowly. I think I'm okay. I breathed it in. The purple stuff. But I'm not dying. Silence on the line. Then Jake's voice carefully controlled. Are you sure you were exposed? Your suit could have protected you. Amy looked down at her suit's diagnostic panel. It was flashing red. Hull breach detected. She had been breathing the contaminated air for almost 2 minutes now. Suit's compromised, sir. I'm definitely exposed, but I feel fine. Better than fine, actually. Just a weird taste in my mouth. Kinda sweet, kinda spicy. The other crew members stared at her. One of them, a young engineer named Ben Cooper, checked his own suit. Also breached. He took a tentative breath. She's right, Captain. I'm breathing it too. It's weird, but I'm not dying. One by one, the other crew members discovered their suits were damaged. One by one, they breathed the purple mist. One by one, they reported feeling fine. When the doors finally opened, Jake stood there staring at them. 7 people who should be dead, standing in a cloud of purple Velcorn bioweapon, looking confused but healthy. Dr. Kevin Ross, the ship's medical officer, ran every test he could think of. The substance was definitely a toxin. It attacked cellular structures, broke down organic compounds, caused rapid tissue death. In theory, exposure to even trace amounts should be fatal within minutes. But the humans were fine. I don't understand it, Kevin said, staring at the data. This should have killed them 100 times over. But their bodies are processing it like it's nothing, like it's barely an irritant. Jake looked at the chemical analysis again. Then he looked at the crew members who had been exposed. They were comparing notes, trying to describe the sensation. Like eating hot peppers, one said. Like breathing in wasabi, another offered, hot peppers, capsaicin. Jake remembered his xenobiology training. Capsaicin was toxic to most mammals except humans. Humans had evolved to not only tolerate it, but seek it out. Could this Velcorn weapon be similar? Get this data transmitted to Earth immediately, Jake ordered. Every piece of information we have on the Velcorn, their weapons, our immunity. Everything. Sir, what are you thinking? Amy asked. Jake looked at her, then at the purple mist still hanging in the sealed section. I'm thinking we just discovered that humanity might be immune to the Velcorn Empire's ultimate weapon. And I'm thinking that changes everything. The message was sent, compressed and encrypted, fired back toward Earth at light speed. It would take weeks to arrive. But when it did, humanity would learn that the galaxy's most feared bioweapon was harmless to them. The war had begun with the Velcorn's certainty of their superiority. It would end when they discovered that their deadliest poison was nothing more than spicy air to the strange species from Earth. But that discovery was still to come. For now, the horizon's edge limped toward home, carrying news that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. News of the Horizon's Edge incident spread through Earth's military command like wildfire. Within hours of receiving Jake Morrison's transmission, every major government and defense organization was analyzing the data. The Velcorn Empire existed. They were hostile, and they possessed weapons that could destroy most organic life with ease, but not human life. Dr. Kevin Ross had been right in his initial assessment. The Velcorn bioweapon, which their databases called Nethril, was almost identical in molecular structure to capsaicin. What the Velcorn used to exterminate entire populations, humans experienced as a mild burning sensation. Tests conducted on volunteers confirmed it. You could pump pure Nethril into a room and humans would complain about watery eyes and a bad taste, but they wouldn't die. Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the briefing room of New Providence Colony, humanity's largest settlement outside Earth. The colony was home to 300,000 people, mostly families of miners and terraformers working to make the planet habitable. It was also humanity's most vulnerable target. The Velkorn fleet will arrive in 6 hours, Admiral Peter Grant said via hologram from Earth. Intelligence suggests they're coming in force. 40 warships, maybe more. We've sent everything we can spare, but it won't be enough. Lisa nodded grimly. Earth's defense fleet consisted of 23 ships, most of them patrol cruisers never designed for real combat. 12 were heading to New Providence. Even with the colony's orbital defense platforms, they were badly outnumbered. "What about the Nethril immunity?" she asked. "That's why you're still there, Commander. We're betting everything on the idea that they'll use biological weapons first. The Velkorn have used Nethril to conquer 47 different species according to the data we pulled from captured databases. It's their standard opening move. They deploy the bioweapon, wait for the population to die, then land and take over. And when it doesn't work," Peter's expression was hard, "then we learn what their backup plan is. But Lisa, this might be our only advantage. The Velkorn don't know we're immune. When they find out, it could change everything." 6 hours later, the Velkorn fleet emerged from jump space in perfect formation. The ships were massive and angular, designed to intimidate. They made no attempt to communicate. Instead, purple clouds began ejecting from their hulls, spreading through the upper atmosphere of New Providence. Nethril, tons of it, enough to kill every living thing on the planet 1,000 times over. Lisa watched from the command center as the purple mist descended toward the colony's main city. Alarms blared. People ran for shelters, following emergency protocols. Children cried as their parents carried them inside. The first wisps of purple fog touched the streets. And nothing happened. People coughed, eyes watered. A few people complained about the strange taste in the air, but nobody died. Parents looked at their children in confusion. The children looked back, scared, but unharmed. In orbit, the Velkorn fleet hung silent. Lisa could imagine the confusion on those ships. They had deployed enough Nethril to exterminate 1 billion people. Their sensors should be showing mass casualties. Instead, they showed humans going about their business, merely inconvenienced. "Commander, they're trying to hail us," the communications officer reported. "Don't answer yet," Lisa said. An idea was forming in her mind. A crazy, dangerous idea. "Get me a camera crew. We're going to send them a message they won't forget." 10 minutes later, Lisa stood in the main plaza of New Providence City. The purple Nethril mist hung thick in the air around her. She wore no protective gear, just her uniform. Behind her, citizens went about their daily routines in the contaminated air. Some had even brought their children out to show they weren't afraid. "Velkorn Fleet, this is Commander Lisa Hayes of New Providence Colony. I'm standing in your Nethril cloud right now, as you can see. So are 300,000 other humans. We're all breathing it. We're all fine." She paused, letting that sink in. Then she took a deep breath, making an exaggerated show of inhaling the purple mist. She coughed once, wiped her eyes, and smiled directly at the camera. "Your ultimate weapon doesn't work on us. It never will. This isn't a trick or advanced technology. This is just human biology. We're immune. So you have 2 choices. You can leave our space peacefully, or you can come down here and fight us face to face. But your days of terrorizing species with poison gas are over." The transmission was sent directly to the Velkorn flagship. Lisa waited, standing in the toxic cloud, wondering if she had just made the situation better or worse. The Velkorn response came 30 minutes later, but not as a transmission. Drop. Pods began falling from their ships, hundreds of them, carrying ground forces to the surface. If Nethril wouldn't work, they would conquer the old-fashioned way, with soldiers and weapons. The pods hit the ground around the colony. Hatches opened, and the Velkorn emerged. They were massive creatures, easily 7 feet tall, with hard exoskeletons that gleamed like black metal. Forearms, each ending in claws that could tear through steel. Compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. They were built for war, and they had never lost a ground battle. The human defenders were miners, engineers, and civilian volunteers, with basic training and whatever weapons the colony could spare. Against the Velkhorn warriors, they should have been slaughtered in minutes. But the humans had one advantage the Velkhorn hadn't considered. They knew their enemies' weapons couldn't hurt them. Private Danny Shaw crouched behind a barricade as Velkhorn warriors advanced down the street. They moved in perfect formation, professional and deadly. Danny's hands shook as he gripped his rifle. He had been a mining equipment operator 2 weeks ago. Now he was supposed to fight actual aliens. The Velkhorn opened fire with some kind of energy weapon. Blue bolts turned the barricade to slag. Danny rolled aside, came up firing. His bullets pinged off Velkhorn armor, doing almost nothing. 3 of his squad mates went down, hit by the energy bolts. Then the Velkhorn switched weapons. They pulled out cylinder-shaped devices and threw them into the street. The cylinders exploded, releasing clouds of purple nethril mist. The Velkhorn clearly expected the humans to panic, to flee from the poison gas. Instead, Danny laughed. It was a slightly hysterical laugh, but genuine. The aliens had just tried to kill him with what was basically pepper spray. "They're using nethril," he shouted to his squad. "Don't worry about the purple clouds, push through them." It was surreal, running through poison gas to attack armored alien warriors, but it worked. The Velkhorn hesitated, confused by humans advancing through their bioweapon. That moment of confusion was all Danny's squad needed. They got close where the Velkhorn's size and reach mattered less, and fought with the desperation of people defending their homes. Across the colony, similar scenes played out. The Velkhorn had superior weapons, armor, and strength. But the humans had motivation and the psychological advantage of being immune to half the Velkhorn arsenal. Every time the aliens deployed nethril, expecting to see humans die, they instead saw humans push forward through the gas. Corporal Nina Bell found herself cornered in a storage facility. 5 Velkhorn warriors had her trapped. She was out of ammunition, armed with only a combat knife against creatures twice her size with natural armor. They advanced slowly, confident in their victory. One of them activated a nethril dispenser, flooding the room with concentrated poison. Nina felt her eyes burning, her throat on fire. It was worse than any hot sauce she had ever tried. But she didn't die. She didn't even fall down. She saw a damaged nethril canister on the ground, leaking purple liquid. An insane idea struck her. If it couldn't kill her anyway, why not use it? Nina grabbed the canister and drank from it. The liquid burned going down, worse than any alcohol, worse than anything she had ever tasted. Her eyes streamed with tears, but she remained standing. She dropped the empty canister and smiled at the Velkhorn warriors through her tears. The effect on the aliens was immediate. They backed away, their body language screaming shock and horror. One of them made a clicking sound that might have been their version of a scream. They had just watched a human drink concentrated nethril, enough to kill 100 Velkhorn and smile about it. They ran. These professional warriors, who had conquered dozens of worlds, turned and fled from one human with a knife. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Velkhorn had the advantage in weapons and numbers, but the humans had desperation and the immunity factor. Every Velkhorn warrior had been trained that nethril was their ultimate advantage, that enemy forces would break and flee when exposed to it. Instead, they faced humans who ran through nethril clouds, who used captured nethril weapons against them, who drank the poison and kept fighting. The psychological impact was devastating. Velkhorn Commander Zethrak, watching from his flagship, saw his ground forces retreating in confusion. His ultimate weapon was useless. His warriors were being beaten not by superior technology, but by an enemy that simply refused to die from what should kill them. He made the decision to withdraw. The Velkhorn fleet gathered its surviving ground, forces, and jumped away, leaving New Providence bloodied but standing. Lisa Hayes stood in the ruins of her command center, watching the Velkhorn ships disappear. Around her, people were cheering, crying, embracing. They had won. Somehow, impossibly, they had fought off the mighty Velkhorn Empire. The defeat at New Providence sent shockwaves through the Velkorn Empire. For 300 cycles, they had been unstoppable. 47 species had fallen before them. And every single time, Nethril had been the key to victory. Deploy the bioweapon, watch the enemy die, claim the territory. Simple, effective, terrifying, until now. Velkorn Commander Zethrak stood before the High Command Council, trying to explain the impossible. The holographic projections showed humans walking through Nethril clouds, drinking the poison, using it against Velkorn warriors. The council members, each representing a different military caste, watched in silence. "You are certain this is not a technological defense?" High Commander Vrelix asked, his mandibles clicking with displeasure. "Certain, my lord. We analyzed their equipment. No protective fields, no chemical neutralizers. Their biology simply processes Nethril as a mild irritant. They evolved to tolerate such compounds naturally." The council chamber filled with clicking sounds as the Velkorn discussed this development. Finally, Vrelix spoke. "Then we will destroy them without Nethril. Gather the full war fleet. We will show these humans that we do not need bioweapons to crush inferior species." Back on Earth, humanity prepared for the inevitable counterattack. Admiral Peter Grant coordinated the defense with a growing sense of dread. Intelligence reports showed the Velkorn assembling a fleet of over 200 ships. Every human vessel was being recalled, every defense platform activated, every able-bodied person given basic military training. But the preparations weren't just military. Dr. Kevin Ross had made a discovery that changed everything. While studying Nethril, he found that it could be synthesized cheaply. If humans were immune and the Velkorn weren't, then Nethril could become a human weapon. Colonel Ryan Pierce oversaw the conversion of several cargo ships into Nethril deployment vessels. It felt wrong turning a bioweapon into their own tool, but war rarely offered clean choices. They filled storage tanks with synthesized Nethril, installed dispersal systems, and trained crews on deployment tactics. "We're becoming what we're fighting against," Lieutenant Amy Carter said, watching the purple liquid being loaded onto the ships. Ryan shook his head. "No, we're using their weapon against them. There's a difference. We're not deploying this against civilian populations, only against their military forces and only when necessary." The Velkorn fleet arrived 3 months after New Providence. They didn't bother with threats or negotiations this time. They jumped into Earth's solar system and immediately began bombarding the outer colonies with kinetic weapons. Massive tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into settlements on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Thousands died in the first hour. Earth's defense fleet moved to intercept, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The Velkorn ships were larger, faster, and better armed. In conventional warfare, humanity didn't stand a chance. That's when Ryan Pierce deployed his converted cargo ships. They approached the Velkorn fleet under heavy fire, their shields failing, hulls breaching. The Velkorn assumed they were suicide vessels, packed with explosives. They concentrated fire on them, trying to destroy them before they could ram into the fleet. The cargo ships didn't ram. Instead, they reached optimal range and released their cargo. Thousands of tons of Nethril, dispersed in clouds that spread through the Velkorn formation. The effect was immediate and devastating. Velkorn ships began to drift as their crews succumbed to the poison. Emergency airlocks opened as they tried to vent the contaminated air, but Nethril clung to surfaces, seeping into every corner of the vessels. Dozens of ships went dark, their crews dead or dying. The surviving Velkorn ships pulled back, their formation broken. Commander Zethrak watched in horror as his own weapon was used against him. Half his fleet was gone in minutes, killed by the very thing they had relied on for centuries. But the Velkorn were not defeated. Zethrak regrouped his forces and changed tactics. If they couldn't use Nethril and humans could, then they would avoid close engagement entirely. The Velkorn fleet began long-range bombardment, staying far enough away that Nethril clouds couldn't reach them. The human fleet couldn't match their range. Earth's orbital defense platforms began falling, destroyed one by Velkorn energy weapons. Cities started to evacuate as debris rained down. It seemed like only a matter of time before the Velkorn broke through completely. Then something unexpected happened. The Galactic Coalition made contact. Ambassador Trell arrived on a small diplomatic vessel, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The fighting paused as both sides tried to understand what was happening. Trell was a Saros, a reptilian species known for their neutrality and diplomatic skill. We represent 17 species who have been watching your conflict with interest, Trell explained to the hastily assembled human leadership. The Velkorn Empire has dominated this region for too long. Your immunity to Nethril has revealed their weakness. Many species wish to see them brought down. President Claire Wright listened carefully. Are you offering an alliance? Not exactly. The coalition cannot openly fight the Velkorn, but we can offer technology, intelligence, and resources. We can also spread word of your immunity throughout the galaxy. The Velkorn's power has always been built on fear. Once that fear is gone, their empire will crumble. The deal was made. The coalition provided human forces with better weapons, faster ships, and detailed intelligence on Velkorn tactics. More importantly, they helped humanity understand their enemy. The Velkorn were a rigid, honor-based society. They valued strength and feared showing weakness. Their entire culture was built on the idea that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. Humanity's immunity to Nethril had shattered that identity. Every Velkorn warrior now knew that their ultimate weapon was useless. Worse, they knew that humans could use Nethril against them. The psychological impact was destroying their morale faster than any weapon. Colonel Ryan Pierce saw the opportunity. If the Velkorn were driven by honor and fear, then humanity needed to break their honor and amplify their fear. He proposed a daring plan that would strike at the heart of the Velkorn's pride. He would challenge them to single combat. The challenge was broadcast across the galaxy, transmitted on every frequency the coalition could access. Colonel Ryan Pierce, representing humanity, challenged the greatest Velkorn warrior to ritual combat. If the human won, the Velkorn would withdraw from human space. If the Velkorn won, humanity would cease resistance. It was a gamble. The Velkorn were physically superior to humans in almost every way. But Ryan was betting on psychology. The Velkorn couldn't refuse such a challenge without looking weak. And if they accepted, it would be fought under terms that humanity could influence. High Commander Vrelax received the challenge with interest. A ritual combat would restore Velkorn honor. They would prove that even if humans were immune to Nethril, they were still inferior in direct combat. He selected War Master Krell-Tok, undefeated in 300 ritual duels, as their champion. The combat would take place on a neutral world, broadcast to every species in the coalition. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the Velkorn won, humanity might face total extinction. If the human won, it could end the war entirely. But Ryan Pierce didn't plan to be the one fighting. He had someone else in mind. Sergeant Ben Cooper was a mining engineer before the war. He wasn't the strongest soldier or the fastest, but he had something else that made him valuable: endurance. Ben had grown up in the desert regions of Earth, working in extreme heat for hours without complaint. He could push through pain and exhaustion that would break other people. "You want me to fight an alien warrior in single combat?" Ben asked when Ryan explained the plan. "Not just fight. Outlast. The Velkorn are strong and fast, but they rely on quick victories. Their biology doesn't handle extended exertion well. You just need to survive long enough for him to tire, and we'll have one other advantage." Ryan explained the rest of the plan. The combat arena would be on a planet with naturally occurring Nethril in the atmosphere. Low levels, not immediately fatal to the Velkorn, but enough to slow them down over time. For Ben, it would just be a mild irritant. Ben trained for 3 weeks, not in combat techniques where he could never match a Velkorn warrior, but in endurance, running until his legs gave out, then running more, holding his breath until his lungs burned, building up his tolerance to pain and exhaustion. The day of the combat arrived. Ben stood in the arena, watching the Velkorn dropship land. War Master Krell-Tok emerged, massive and intimidating, his exoskeleton gleaming in the alien sun. He carried traditional Velkorn weapons, bladed arms that could cut through steel. Ben carried a simple combat knife and his endurance. The battle would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of the entire Velkorn Empire. And it was about to begin. The arena was a natural amphitheater carved into red stone by wind and time. Above it, the sky showed a faint purple tinge from the Nethril that occurred naturally in the planet's atmosphere. It wasn't enough to kill the Velkorn quickly, but it would wear on them. For Ben Cooper, it was just another day breathing spicy air. Millions watched across the galaxy. On Earth, every screen showed the feed. In human colonies, Work stopped as people gathered to watch. On Velcorn worlds, citizens demanded to see their champion crush the upstart human. The Galactic Coalition species watched with quiet hope, wondering if the impossible might happen. Warmaster Kreltok stood at one end of the arena, his forearms spread wide, bladed weapons gleaming. He was a legend among the Velcorn, a warrior who had never lost, who had killed enemies from a dozen species. He looked at Ben Cooper with what might have been contempt or curiosity. To Kreltok, this was a formality. Humans might be immune to Nethril, but they were still soft, small creatures. Ben stood at the other end, looking almost absurdly small in comparison. He wore light armor and carried only his knife. His throat already burned slightly from the Nethril in the air, his eyes watering, but he ignored it. He had trained for this. Pain was just information. Discomfort was just a challenge to overcome. The signal was given. The combat began. Kreltok moved with terrifying speed. For a creature so large, he was incredibly fast. He closed the distance in seconds, his bladed arms slashing in a pattern designed to leave no escape. Ben threw himself aside, barely avoiding the strike. The blades cut through the stone where he had been standing. The Velcorn pressed the attack, relentless and professional. Ben could only dodge, roll, retreat. Every time he tried to counterattack, Kreltok's natural armor turned his knife aside. It was like trying to stab a tank. Within minutes, Ben had several shallow cuts. Kreltok didn't have a scratch. On Earth, people watched with growing despair. It looked like a massacre in slow motion. How could a human possibly beat that thing? But Ben wasn't trying to win through strength. He was trying to survive. Every dodge, every roll, every desperate scramble took him deeper into the arena, toward areas where the purple Nethril fog hung thicker. Kreltok followed, confident in his superiority. The Velcorn warrior began to slow. It was subtle at first, his movements just a fraction less crisp. The Nethril was affecting him, not critically, but enough. His breathing grew heavier. His strikes, while still dangerous, came a bit slower. Ben's breathing was also heavy, but from exertion rather than poison. His muscles burned, his lungs ached, but these were sensations he knew how to push through. He had worked 16-hour shifts in desert heat. He had run marathons for fun. This was just another test of endurance. Kreltok seemed to realize the strategy. He roared, a clicking, shrieking sound, and charged forward with renewed aggression. He drove Ben toward a cliff face, trying to trap him, to end this quickly before the Nethril sapped more of his strength. Ben let himself be cornered. Then, at the last second, dropped and rolled between Kreltok's legs. The Velcorn warrior crashed into the cliff face, his momentum too great to stop. Ben scrambled away, heading toward a dense pocket of purple fog. The crowd across the galaxy watched in confusion. The human was running away, leading his opponent through poison gas. On Velcorn world, citizens clicked with satisfaction. The human was trying to hide like a coward. On Earth, people began to understand. He wasn't running. He was hunting. In the thick Nethril fog, Ben's visibility was terrible. His eyes streamed with tears. His throat felt like he had swallowed fire. But he could still move, still fight, still think. Kreltok entered the fog after him, and Ben heard the Velcorn's breathing become labored, desperate. The warrior was dying slowly, drowning in the same weapon his people had used to conquer the galaxy. Ben could hear him thrashing, trying to clear the poison from his lungs. This was it. This was the moment to strike. But Ben hesitated. He thought about all the people the Velcorn had killed with Nethril, all the species they had exterminated. This warrior probably had blood from dozens of worlds on his hands. It would be justice to let him die here, choking on his own weapon. Yet something stopped him. Maybe it was humanity's instinct for mercy. Maybe it was the knowledge that the galaxy was watching. Maybe it was just the realization that killing a helpless opponent, even an enemy, wasn't who he wanted to be. Ben moved through the fog until he found Kreltok, collapsed and convulsing. The great warrior's exoskeleton was no protection against the poison in the air. His forearms twitched uselessly. His compound eyes were clouding over. Ben grabbed him, wrapping his arms around the massive alien, and dragged him out of the fog. It was like dragging a car. Kreltok must have weighed 400 pounds. But Ben had trained for this. He pulled, strained, refused to stop even when his muscles screamed. Inch by inch, he hauled the Velkorn warrior out of the deadly fog and into clear air. Velkorn medics rushed forward, their own suits protecting them from the Nethril. They stared in shock at the scene. The humans stood over their fallen champion, breathing hard but alive. Kreltok lay gasping, saved by the very opponent he had been sent to destroy. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Ben Cooper had won, not through strength or violence, but through endurance and an act of mercy that no one had expected. On the Velkorn homeworld, High Commander Vrelix watched the feed with something close to disbelief. Their greatest warrior had been defeated, not killed in glorious combat, but saved from death by the poison that should have been their advantage. The shame of it was overwhelming. Yet there was also something else. A grudging respect for an opponent who showed mercy when they could have shown cruelty. War Master Kreltok recovered slowly. When he could speak again, he addressed the Velkorn High Command directly. I have fought warriors from 17 species. I have never been defeated. Today I was beaten by a human who refused to kill me when he had the chance. He showed more honor in that moment than we have shown in 300 cycles of conquest. The words hit like a shockwave. A war master speaking against the Empire. It was unthinkable. Yet Kreltok continued. We built our power on Nethril. We told ourselves it was our right to rule because we possessed the ultimate weapon. But we never asked what would happen when we met a species immune to it. The humans have shown us. They are stronger than us not because they can kill better, but because they can endure more. They can survive our worst weapon and still choose mercy. The High Command debated for hours. Some wanted to continue the war, to prove that the Velkorn could win without Nethril. Others saw the truth. Their empire was built on a foundation that had cracked. Word was spreading across the galaxy. The mighty Velkorn had been defeated by a human who saved his enemy's life. Subject species were already beginning to rebel, emboldened by the knowledge that the Velkorn's ultimate weapon was no longer unique or unstoppable. Finally, Vrelix made the decision. The Velkorn would sue for peace. The announcement came via galactic broadcast. The Velkorn Empire acknowledged humanity's sovereignty and agreed to withdraw from human space. More than that, they offered reparations and proposed a cultural exchange. They wanted to learn from the species that had beaten them through endurance rather than strength. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. Joy at the war's end, but also confusion. They had expected to fight for years, maybe decades. Instead, one man's endurance and mercy had ended it in hours. Ben Cooper became an instant celebrity, though he didn't want the attention. He just wanted to go back to mining, to his simple life. But the galaxy wouldn't let him. He had become a symbol of humanity's unexpected strength, not strength of weapons or technology, but strength of character. President Claire Wright addressed the world. We didn't win this war through superior firepower. We won because we can endure what others cannot, because we can show mercy when we have every reason to show cruelty. That's the message we send to the galaxy. Humanity is not to be feared because we're dangerous. We're to be respected because we're resilient. The Galactic Coalition formally invited Earth to join their ranks. Ambassador Trell arrived for the ceremony, his reptilian face showing what might have been a smile. You have done what no species has managed in 300 cycles. You have humbled the Velkorn without destroying them. You have shown that there are alternatives to their way of conquest. But the war's end wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been established, but what that place would look like remained to be seen. 6 months after the combat on the neutral world, Earth looked different. Ships from a dozen different species now docked at the orbital stations. Trade routes that had been established by the Galactic Coalition now included human worlds. The species that had feared the Velkorn for centuries were now eager to meet the humans who had humbled them. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Endurance, humanity's first true warship. It wasn't the largest ship in human fleet, but it was a symbol. Where the Horizon's Edge had been an exploration vessel that stumbled into war, the Endurance was built from the ground up for defense. Not for conquest, but for protection. Captain, we're receiving another delegation request, Lieutenant Amy Carter reported. She had been promoted after her survival of the first Nethril exposure, becoming something of a legend herself. The Soros Concordat wants to establish a permanent embassy on Earth. Jake nodded. Add them to the list. How many does that make now? 17 species requesting formal diplomatic relations. And that's not counting the trade agreements and scientific exchange programs. It was overwhelming, this sudden attention. For centuries, humanity had dreamed of finding other life in the universe. Now they had found it, or rather, it had found them, all because they could eat poison. Dr. Kevin Ross had become the head of Earth's xenobiology program. His office was constantly filled with samples from different species, all trying to understand human immunity to Nethril and similar compounds. What they were discovering was fascinating and slightly disturbing. Humans, it turned out, were biological anomalies. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on worlds with relatively stable environments and abundant resources. They had specialized, becoming very good at surviving in their specific conditions. Humans, by contrast, had evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them. Ice ages, droughts, predators, diseases, and plants that were toxic to most animals but edible to humans who learned the right preparation methods. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't intelligence or technology. It was the ability to survive on almost anything. They could eat foods that would poison other species. They could endure temperature ranges that would kill most aliens. They could survive injuries that would be fatal to more specialized life forms. Earth had forged humans in a crucible of adversity, and the result was a species that was unreasonably hard to kill. We're basically the galaxy's cockroaches, Kevin joked during a presentation to the Galactic Coalition, except cockroaches are easier to poison. The Velkorn, meanwhile, were going through a cultural revolution. The peace treaty had been honored, but the psychological impact of their defeat was profound. War Master Kreltok had become an unlikely advocate for reform. He toured Velkorn worlds, speaking about the combat and what he had learned. We believed strength meant the ability to kill, Kreltok said in one speech that was broadcast across the Empire. The humans showed us that true strength is the ability to endure. We used Nethril because it was easy, because it let us win without risk. But the humans faced our weapon, survived it, and then chose mercy. That is strength we never understood. Not all Velkorn agreed. There was a conservative faction that saw the peace as a betrayal, who wanted to continue the war until humanity was destroyed. But they were in the minority. Most Velkorn, especially the younger generations, were curious about these strange humans who could survive their ultimate weapon. The first cultural exchange happened in the form of food. A group of Velkorn scientists visited Earth to study human cuisine, trying to understand how humans had evolved to eat such dangerous things. What they found shocked them. Chocolate, which humans loved, contained theobromine that was toxic to many species. Coffee contained caffeine, a powerful stimulant that could cause heart failure in aliens. Alcohol was literally poison that humans drank for fun. And peppers, the source of capsaicin, were cultivated specifically to be as painful as possible to eat. You intentionally grow plants that hurt you, then eat them for pleasure. One Velkorn scientist asked in disbelief. The human chef laughed. Some people eat peppers so hot they require medical supervision. We have competitions to see who can handle the most pain. It's fun, the Velkorn scientist made a note in his datapad. Humans have an unusual relationship with suffering. Further study required, but the food exchange went both ways. Humans discovered that many alien foods were perfectly safe for them to eat, and some were delicious. Trade in exotic ingredients began almost immediately, with human restaurants serving dishes from a dozen different worlds. The galaxy's cuisine became Earth's cuisine, and vice versa. Commander Lisa Hayes was appointed as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Coalition. Her broadcast during the Battle of New Providence had made her famous across multiple species. She now worked to build relationships, establish trade agreements, and prevent conflicts before they started. The galaxy is not a friendly place, she told a group of human diplomats in training. There are empires out there that make the Velkorn look peaceful. We got lucky with our first contact. We happened to be immune to their weapon. But we can't count on being lucky again. We need to be smart, diplomatic, and always ready to defend ourselves. The Galactic Coalition was particularly interested in human military tactics. The way humans had adapted Velcorn weapons and turned them against their creators showed a flexibility that most species lacked. Coalition military advisors studied human history, learning about guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, and the human tendency to find creative solutions to impossible problems. You fought wars on your own planet for thousands of years, Ambassador Trell observed during a meeting with human military leaders. Most species achieve global unity before developing space travel. You went to the stars while still divided. This gives you perspectives we lack. Colonel Ryan Pierce, now promoted to general, helped establish Earth's joint defense agreements with coalition species. We're not trying to build an empire. We're trying to make sure no one else builds one either. The Velcorn showed us what happens when one species gets too powerful and too confident. The Velcorn themselves were struggling with this new reality. Their empire wasn't collapsing, but it was changing. Subject species were demanding autonomy, and without Nethril as their unbeatable weapon, the Velcorn couldn't enforce their old authority. Some systems declared independence. Others negotiated for better terms within a reformed empire. High Commander Vrelix stepped down, replaced by a reformist council that included representatives from subject species. The old ways were dying, replaced by something that looked more like the Galactic Coalition's model. It was messy and difficult, but it was progress. Ben Cooper, the man who had won the war with endurance and mercy, wanted nothing to do with politics or military glory. He had returned to Earth and gone back to mining, working the asteroid belts like he had before the war. But he couldn't escape his fame entirely. A Velcorn delegation requested to meet him. They came to the mining station where he worked, a group of young Velcorn who had been inspired by his actions. They wanted to learn about human endurance training, about the philosophy that let him show mercy to an enemy. "I didn't do anything special," Ben tried to explain. "I just didn't give up, and I didn't kill someone when they were helpless." That's basic human decency, not philosophy. But to the Velcorn it was revolutionary. They had been raised in a culture that valued strength and dominance. The idea that you could win without killing, that you could show mercy to a defeated enemy, was alien to them. They stayed at the mining station for weeks, working alongside Ben, trying to understand. Back on Earth, President Claire Wright addressed the world on the anniversary of the war's end. "A year ago, we were thrust into a galactic conflict we didn't understand. We survived because of biology, because Earth made us tough enough to eat poison. But we won because of character, because we chose endurance over brutality and mercy over revenge." She paused, looking at the camera. "The galaxy is vast and full of wonders and dangers. We've only just begun to explore it. But whatever we find out there, we'll face it the same way we faced the Velcorn, with resilience, creativity, and the understanding that true strength isn't about how much damage you can inflict. It's about how much you can endure and still choose to do the right thing." Jake Morrison watched the speech from the bridge of the Endurance. The ship was on patrol near the border of Coalition space, part of the Joint Defense Network. It was peaceful work mostly, showing the flag, building relationships, responding to distress calls. "Captain, we're receiving a signal from an unknown vessel," Amy reported. "They're requesting assistance." "Engine failure, life support failing." Jake straightened. "Plot an intercept course, maximum speed, and send word to the Coalition. Unknown vessel might mean first contact with a new species." Amy smiled as she carried out the orders. A year ago, that would have been terrifying. Now it was just another day in the galaxy. Humans had proven they could survive contact with hostile aliens. Maybe they could help friendly ones too. The Endurance changed course, heading toward the distressed vessel. Whatever species they found there would meet humanity not as conquerors or victims, but as neighbors in a vast and complicated galaxy.